Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is what we call our group learning program, where each Sunday and Wednesday I get together with students, helping them to understand the path to enlightenment. What I do is I use this first book of our book series as a guide, and what I do is every Sunday I go chapter by chapter in this book. Today our topic is chapter 24, which is titled Misunderstandings of Gotama Buddha's Teachings. I'm going to help you guys to understand the history of how Buddhist teachings came into the world and why we see so many misunderstandings in the world and what those misunderstandings are. Because the Buddha taught you to be able to train your mind and be able to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will have eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. But if you're practicing these misunderstandings, it's not actually going to lead to that result. So the Buddha cautioned us during his lifetime to not change his teachings. But unfortunately, over the 2,500-year history from the time where he left and he died, people have changed his teachings. So it's helpful for you to understand what those misunderstandings are. So I'm going to help you guys to understand those so that now you can more and more understand what the Buddha actually taught and practice that, because that's what's going to lead to your enlightenment. We start each one of our classes with meditation. So I'm going to guide you guys in a meditation session. And then afterwards, I'll share this talk with you. Well, the way that we start our meditation is we start with some chanting in order to be able to ease the mind into meditation. You're welcome to chant along if you'd like. Understand that when you're chanting, this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or any of those kinds of things. If you're seeing those kinds of things associated with the teachings of the Buddha, those aren't his actual teachings. He didn't teach rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. His teachings aren't based in belief. It's helping you to do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development, becoming a better and better human being by training of your mind. During his lifetime, he used chanting as a way to help his students to commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. This is the way they committed them to their memory. Where today we use books and audiobooks, videos, podcasts, things like this. But YouTube didn't exist 2,500 years ago. So the Buddha needed to use something in order to help his students to remember his teachings. So he used recitation of his teachings. So today there's people who think this is prayer or worship or things like that. But you can see from the lifetime of the Buddha that it was used as a learning tool or as a learning device. It's not a ritual or a ceremony or prayer, anything like that. Today we use chanting as a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you would like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. We have the chants over there on the cabinet. There's laminated sheets. You're welcome to help yourself to get one, and you can chant along during the chanting period if you like. So at any point, if you guys would like to get one, you're welcome to do that. For those of you guys online, this is on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. If you click on free books, you can scroll down towards the bottom of the page and you'll see the daily chanting sheet there. After the chants, I'm going to come in with some guidance where I'll be guiding you during the meditation, helping you guys to essentially learn how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. Then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where everybody's meditating here at the temple and anybody online who's joining. Now, during this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might actually hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping, someone here might cough or sneeze. This is all normal. If you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you'll cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. This is what's causing your mind to experience things like anger, sadness, and frustration. That the mind in the unenlightened state craves permanence, and it can only be happy when it gets what it wants and what it expects. But the world is impermanent. It's constantly changing. So as long as your mind craves permanence while you live in an impermanent world, you're going to constantly be experiencing anger and sadness and frustration. But if you're in meditation, understanding that the world is impermanent, and you can't meditate in an environment that's permanently quiet, then when you hear a sound, you'll understand, well, that's normal. This sound is going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. This is the way that the world works. So you can rest at ease while you're in meditation, understanding that the world is impermanent and things are going to be constantly changing. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand the misunderstandings of the teachings of the Buddha. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times as part of your journey to enlightenment. This is part of like a tool belt that you erect during classes, courses, and retreats. You kind of apply the different tools that you need at different times. So these different positions are something that you would like to learn at different times. But oftentimes people are learning and starting out in the seated position. So I'll provide you guys some guidance on the seated position just to help you get started. You could be sitting on the floor in a chair. Maybe if someone's at home, they're on a bench or a sofa in a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. There's not just one way to sit. So the things that I'm going to share with you are suggestions or recommendations that you might consider. Because if there was just one way to sit, that would be permanence. And we don't live in that world. We live in an impermanent world. So you can sit however you like. But if you're on the floor, you might consider having some cushions under your rear. This will help soften your seat a bit. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you might just choose to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, this can impede the circulation in your lower body. So people oftentimes like to just do it real lightly. Or some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you do whatever is comfortable for you. The same thing's true for someone who's in a chair or a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can also sit however you like. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting here in a chair with my legs crossed, so this is an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. You like your upper body to be erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back. This will help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. What meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during this meditation. Whereas if you were slouched like this, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you're real rigid with the upper body, your mind can be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because not only will it keep the mind attentive and alert, but it'll make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So I'm going to get started with some chanting, which I mentioned you guys are welcome to join in, and then I'll come back in with the guidance afterwards. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Bhagavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sankho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสเอมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะเขวาพุทธังมหะเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิ สวากขาโตมหะเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหะเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here. Good morning. Welcome to everyone online as well. The individual who we refer to as the Buddha was born in 563 BCE. He was born in what we refer to as Nepal, and he was destined to become a king. He was the firstborn son of a king, and he was planning to be the king. But by the age of 29, he stepped away from that life, and he goes on this journey to be able to get to enlightenment, where he can actually experience peace and joy within his own mind. It takes him 6 years to be able to get to that mental state, but by the age of 35, he's figured out how to get to enlightenment. It's all about training the mind. It's purification of the mind. So he teaches from the age of 35 to the age of 80 when he dies. He dies in 483 BC, and he taught in Northeast India. And he was sharing his teachings with countless people, and many people were getting to enlightenment. And his teachings were all oral during his lifetime, so they were handed down from generation to generation orally. But shortly after his death, they ended up writing his teachings down, because the technology to write things down didn't exist during his lifetime in that region of the world. It existed in China, but it hadn't made its way to that region of the world. Now, you might not see writing something down as technology, but 2,500 years ago, this was technology. And just like technology nowadays kind of rolls through the world, it's the same thing that during that time, it actually rolled even slower through the world. So by the time he dies, they actually have the technology to write things down. So shortly after his death, 500 enlightened beings get together, the people that had trained in his teachings and gotten to enlightenment, and they start to document his actual teachings. And by the time you get to enlightenment, whatever it took to get to enlightenment, you'll have that deeply ingrained in your mind. You'll never forget what it takes for you to get to enlightenment. So these 500 people out of the countless people that got to enlightenment during his lifetime come together, and they agree on what it is that the Buddha taught that led to their enlightenment, and they document it. And we call this today the Pali Canon. This is the largest, most complete collection that we have of the teachings of the Buddha. Not everybody studies this, though. Very few people actually study his original teachings because it's in 45 volumes of books that are about this thick. The average Thai person, it would take them about 3 months of their salary to be able to print this out. And you probably don't own any book collections that's valued at 3 months of your salary. So these teachings have really been hidden for a long time, not intentionally hidden, but they've been inadvertently hidden just because of the cost in printing these things out. So mainly the teachings have been handed down orally for 2,500 years. And because of that, the teachings have been drastically altered in some cases. Because if you've ever done the little game where as a child you sit around in a circle and maybe I whisper to somebody and I say, the orange tiger jumped over the green fence and landed in the blue pond. And then by the time it makes its way all the way around the room and it comes back, it's like the gray elephant busted through the brown house and landed on the green field, right? It's completely changed just in the 5 minutes that it takes to get all the way around the room. Well, there's been 2,500 years of this, of people handing down the teachings from generation to generation orally. Rather than study the original words of the Buddha, people have relied on this oral tradition. And because of that, things have been either inadvertently changed just as it made its way around the world, or in some cases, people overtly changed the Buddhist teachings. And he cautioned against this during his lifetime. If you look at his original teachings, he explains that changing his teachings is going to cause harm to you and countless other people. Because getting to enlightenment would be the very best thing that could ever happen for you. Getting to enlightenment is that your mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of that is eliminated through training of the mind. You'll notice you have focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing the lack of those things, that you've uprooted certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered. He figured out the tools and the techniques of how to train your mind to uproot those out of the mind, and now your mind will start performing optimally, where you'll notice you have focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. By the time you get to enlightenment, all your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming, that you don't have this bitterness and harshness and hostility in your mind anymore. Oftentimes people think that that's being caused by others, but it's actually being caused by your mind itself. And when you get rid of all of that out of your mind and you start being loving and kind and warm and gentle with the people around you, this is really going to improve your relationships. They're going to drastically improve. But as long as you're being bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships, all that stuff is just coming back to you. By the time you get to enlightenment, it's physically impossible for you to even experience a bad mood. So getting to enlightenment would be the very best thing that could ever happen for you and the people around you, because you're not going to be causing harm to the people around you. So if we change the teachings, it's going to cause harm to us because those teachings are no longer going to be effective to be able to help us get to this enlightened mental state. But also, if we change the teachings and we share that with someone else, it's going to hinder them from being able to get to enlightenment as well. So the Buddha cautioned against this. But because people don't study his original teachings and they've been handed down through countless generations in the oral tradition, there's countless misunderstandings about the teachings of the Buddha. And I'm going to help you to understand 9 of these really important misunderstandings, because the more that you understand what the teachings are, you can learn and practice those, and you can see the truth for yourself. Because nothing in the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. This is how you cut through this impermanence. Because even the books themselves, maybe they've changed. Maybe people change the books and you don't necessarily know this. Just because there's a book that says Buddhism on it, you shouldn't assume that that's actually what the Buddha taught. You need to be able to learn, examine, and investigate his teachings. You need to reflect to verify whether they're true or they're false through your own independent verification. And then you need to practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life so that you can see the truth. Because if it improves the condition of your mind, then you know that it's the teachings that actually work to guide you closer and closer to enlightenment. What the Buddha discovered is that there's these 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind. They're referred to as the 10 fetters. But when we talk about these at a high level, we call them the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires. This is craving, anger, and ignorance. This is what's keeping the mind in the unenlightened state, continuing to experience anger and sadness and frustration over and over and over again, and all those other feelings. But when you uproot these out of your mind, that's where you'll see more and more of the qualities of enlightenment shining through. And the Buddha gives you the tools of how to do this. So you need to cultivate wisdom. The wisdom that you need to cultivate is to understand that it's not the outside world that's causing you to experience anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other feelings. It's not your mom and dad. It's not your brothers and sisters, or your boss, or the politicians, or any kind of other things that are going on in the world. That's not what's causing you to be angry or frustrated. What it is called craving, desire, attachment. The mind's longing, yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. The mind is craving permanence while you live in an impermanent world. The mind can only experience happiness if it gets what it wants and what it expects. So the mind will chase and chase and chase and chase. And if you get what you want and what you expect, you'll get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, or euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So for example, if you wake up in the morning and you see that it's sunny outside, you might get really, really happy about that. It's like, yay, I'm going to go hiking today. There's this hiking trail that I want to go on, or I want to ride my bicycle, right? Yeah, I'm going to go outside and ride my bicycle. Oh, it's going to be so much fun, right? You get so excited. And then maybe you go take a shower and you come out and it's raining. And now you're sad or frustrated or angry. It's not the sun that's causing that. It's not other people that are causing that. There's no other person even involved. The only thing that's happened here is change. But the mind in the unenlightened state doesn't understand that. It's craving permanence. If it gets what it wants, which is the sun, it gets really happy about that. But because the sun is not permanent, your happiness is not permanent. So if you form your happiness based on something like the sun, then you're guaranteeing that you can't be happy permanently, because you can only be happy when it's sunny outside. Or for example, if your bank account balance is up here and you get really, really happy, when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated. The only thing that's happened here is change. That's all that's happened. But the mind craves permanence. Think about when we were a child, because you need to look at this in your own life. You can't believe what it is that I'm sharing with you. That if you look at your own life, you can see when we were a child, we'd go to our parents and we'd say, Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? And they'd say, sure, you can have chocolate and ice cream. Here's your chocolate and ice cream. And we're like, oh, thank you, Mommy and Daddy. You're the best Mommy and Daddy ever. We'd be so happy because we got what we wanted, the chocolate and ice cream. And then we go to them again on the second day and we say, Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? Sure, here you go. Here's your chocolate and ice cream. Ah, thank you, Mommy and Daddy. You're so great. You're wonderful, right? We'd be licking our chocolate and ice cream. We'd be so happy. And then the third day came around and we'd say, Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? And they'd say, no. You're the worst Mommy and Daddy ever, right? We'd be so angry. It's not Mom and Dad that's causing that. It's your own mind, because the mind's not getting its cravings fulfilled. That longing, yearning can only be happy when it gets what it wants. So in the unenlightened state, it's kind of like if Mom and Dad do this, if my brothers and sisters do this, if my boss does this, if the weather is this, if I have this kind of house and this kind of car and I have this much money in my bank account, then I'll be happy. Right? So your happiness is actually shrinking. This is called conditional happiness, that all these conditions have to be met in order for you to be happy. And that means you can't be happy permanently. So when your mind is experiencing craving, desire, attachment, you can only be happy when you get what you want. But because the world is impermanent, then that means you can't be happy permanently. And when that anger and that frustration is arising, it's very painful. And the mind firmly believes that it's someone else that's causing this. And what you'll tend to do is you'll tend to be unskillful when this anger is arising. You'll tend to push people away out of your life. This is called aversion, where you're trying to push this person or this situation out of your life thinking that that's going to solve your problem. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem, because you still get angry, you still get frustrated or annoyed, or any of these other discontent feelings. Or the second thing you'll do is you tend to be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, thinking that somehow you're going to fear this person into doing things your way, because the mind's craving that permanence and wanting everybody to do things a certain way. Or the third thing you'll do is you'll tend to put your expectations on people and try to pressure them or control them to do things a certain way. And this is where the mind is confused, because it thinks that the problem is external. It doesn't realize that it's your mind itself. It's the cravings that's causing this. So when this craving and anger is in the mind, the whole reason why this is there is because of this third poison of ignorance or unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom, the confusion, the misunderstanding that the mind has. So we call it craving, anger, and ignorance. And this word ignorance isn't really the best word, because that's a derogatory word. It's a degrading word. And the Buddha would have never said that, right? He wouldn't have called someone ignorant. As an enlightened being, you don't talk to people in degrading in diminishing ways. Instead, a better way to think about this is the unknowing of true reality, that the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. The mind in the unenlightened state will firmly believe that it's other people who are causing you to be angry and frustrated. So while we call it craving, anger, and ignorance, it's really because of this ignorance that the mind continues to crave, and it continues to have anger. The mind stays stuck in this continuous cycle of experiencing craving and anger over and over and over again because of its ignorance, because of its lack of wisdom. So everything on the path to enlightenment with the teachings of the Buddha is to cultivate wisdom. The way you cultivate wisdom to know true reality of what's truly occurring with your mind and with the world around you is that you don't believe anything whatsoever. There is no belief in the teachings of the Buddha at all, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because somebody convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. You need to get to wisdom where you know the truth. So the way you do that is you learn, investigate, and examine teachings. You then reflect on those teachings to verify through your own direct experience if they're true or they're false. And then you practice the teachings. And as you practice what the Buddha taught, you will see that your mind slowly, gradually moves closer to this enlightened mental state. Because you know situations where you get angry and frustrated. And as you're training your mind with these teachings and you see your mind's not doing that anymore, you'll know that it's these teachings that are helping you to get there. So everything the Buddha taught is all about cultivation of wisdom, doing this inner work, this inner growth, this development of the mind. He never taught any rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer, because those things don't cultivate wisdom in your mind to be able to help you make better decisions. So for example, there's no amount of water that I can sprinkle on you that's going to make your life better. There's no amount of strings that I can tie on your wrist that's going to improve your life. If you're having difficulties in your personal, professional life, what's going to improve that is the cultivation of wisdom, training your mind about how to interact in the world in a more loving and kind and warm way. So this is what the Buddha actually taught. But there's these countless misunderstandings that exist in the world. And you're going to see these even when you go around to Buddhist temples, when you talk to people who are wearing certain color of clothes and shaving their hair. You'll see different people doing these things because those people might firmly believe that that's what the Buddha actually taught. Because if you grew up with those things and you saw mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and brothers and sisters and everybody doing these kinds of things, you would just think that this is what the Buddha actually taught because you don't have a frame of reference of anything else other than what you were exposed to growing up. But when you look at it from the outside in and you study the original teachings of the Buddha, you can see what did he teach and what he didn't teach. And when you don't believe his teachings, but instead you integrate them into your day-to-day life and you see the condition of your mind improving, you'll know that what you're studying is the original teachings of the Buddha. So where these misunderstandings came from is through impermanence, constant change. I'm going to help you guys to understand this, but before I do, I just would like to let you know that I'm going to be pausing a few times and opening up to any questions that you guys might have, because as I walk through this, you might have questions for me. And that's an important part of learning, is that you don't believe what I'm sharing, but you ask questions. So if you guys have questions here online, you can ask questions. We have microphones in the white bowl there in the middle of the room. We have some up here in the front as well. If you get a microphone and take it to your seat, press the gray button. And if you hold this up to your chin, we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these microphones with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share it with them. And if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll be helpful so we don't get feedback through the speakers. And anybody who's online, you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comments section, and I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like. So where these misunderstandings came from is that people actually didn't study the original teachings of the Buddha, realizing the harm that was going to be caused by actually changing his teachings. And the history of it is the individual who we refer to as the Buddha originated in this area here. This is Nepal and Northeast India. And from there, after his death in 483 BCE, the teachings spread all throughout the world. And as they spread, there's these different traditions that were created. Now, during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was just the Buddha teaching. I mean, there were other people who were teaching, but in terms of what the Buddha was teaching, it was very clear. It was very much shining in the world. His teachings were very bright and very vibrant in the world. People were understanding what it was that he was teaching, and there were countless people getting to enlightenment. But after his death, the world went through these 500-year cycles that the Buddha actually predicted during his lifetime. He talked about the first 500 years after his death, people would be very strong in their union, and they would understand his teachings very deeply. Essentially, people would be getting to enlightenment quite a bit for the first 500 years after his death. The next 500 years, he talked about how people would be very good at meditation, and they would be doing a lot of meditation. The second 500 years, he talked about that scholars would be very interested in what it was that he taught, and they would be writing books and studying what it is that he actually taught. And we can see that this is the case, that scholars were studying his teachings during that period of time. The fourth 500 years, he talked about how people would be very generous towards his teachings, and they would be practicing a lot of generosity. And you can see here in Thailand, this is when a lot of these temples were built. From about 500 to 1,000 years ago, people were practicing enormous amounts of generosity to give land and give resources to build all this infrastructure that you see in Thailand with these temples. That was the fourth 500 years that the Buddha predicted. The last 500 years that we just ended in 2017, the Buddha predicted that people would be utterly confused about what it is that he actually taught, that his teachings would have degraded by so much by that point in time that people would be fighting and, arguing about what it is that he actually taught. So during these 2,500 years of process and of history, we see these different traditions that are actually spawning. The first one is called the Theravada tradition, or the Theravada Buddhism. The word Theravada means the teachings of the elders. You'll see this predominantly in places like Thailand, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, southern Vietnam. It's really been spread all throughout the world, but this is the main focal point of where you'll see this tradition. In this tradition, they focus on the Pali Canon, the original words of the Buddha, and they would like to study the original words in order to be able to train their mind, cultivate wisdom, and get to enlightenment. It's a gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, which will actually lead to your enlightenment. And people consider this to be the form of teachings that is closest to what the Buddha actually taught during his lifetime. But even in this tradition, there's countless misunderstandings. Some people will refer to this tradition as the lesser vehicle, or Hinayana. This is a way to degrade or diminish this tradition. But in reality, this tradition is actually closest to what the Buddha taught among any other teachings or collection of teachings that you'll see in the world. Then there's something called Mahayana Buddhism, which spawns about 500 years after the death of the Buddha. That's when it was created. So it had already been changed quite a bit. You'll see this predominantly in places like East Asia, like China. But in reality, it's been spread all throughout the world. It's not just China that has this tradition. It's really been spread all throughout the world. What you'll see in this tradition is you'll see certain rituals and ceremonies and prayer and certain beliefs, worship of deities and things of this nature. And then about 1,000 years after the death of the Buddha, there's Vajrayana Buddhism that is created. This is mainly in Tibet, but you'll see it in other places as well. It's not just Tibet. And here you'll see a lot of changes to what the Buddhists taught. You'll see rituals, ceremonies, deity worship, prayer, and all kinds of different things. But remember, what the Buddha taught you to do is to cultivate wisdom, to do this inner work, to uproot the pollution out of the mind. There's no amount of rituals or ceremonies that can be done that's going to make your life better. In fact, during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were individuals called Brahmin that were doing rituals and ceremonies. These Brahmin, today, we would probably refer to them as Hindu priests. These Hindu priests were born into a certain family, and about 15% of society were part of the Brahmin class. And all the rest of us, the 85% of us, were taught that we can't improve our life. There's nothing we can do to improve our life. If we would like to have a better life, we had to go meet with the Brahmin, pay them a fee. They were going to do rituals, ceremonies, and prayer on our behalf, and then we were supposed to go home, and our life was going to be better. So if you had difficulties with your life partner, or your children, or at work, you would go to this Brahmin, pay them a fee, and say, hey, this is what's going on. Can you do something to make my life better? And then they would do rituals and ceremonies, and you were supposed to go home and life would get better. But then it wouldn't get better because you didn't have any new wisdom. You were still doing things the same way that you always did them before. And now things would get worse. And maybe you'll go back after 3 weeks or 3 months and you would say, wow, things have gotten worse. Can you help me? And they're like, oh, that's a different ceremony. That's going to cost you more money, right? So it bred corruption. And the Buddha talked about this during his lifetime, and he explained how this isn't the way the world works, that if you're interested in experiencing improvement in your life, you need to do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development. You need to cultivate wisdom, make better decisions in your life. That's what's going to lead to improvement. So that's what the Buddha focused on. But these other traditions, and even in the Theravada tradition itself, there's a tremendous amount of rituals and ceremonies that you're going to see. So I'm going to now talk with you about different misunderstandings. And most of what I'm sharing with you is based in the Theravada tradition, that these are the misunderstandings you're going to see. Now, each one of these call themselves Buddhism. And off of each one of these, there's multiple branches. So while there's 3 main schools of Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, there's really about over 200 different branches of what people are referring to as Buddhism. But there was only one Buddha. So there can't be 200 different Buddhisms. Whatever the Buddha taught, the original words of the Buddha is what the Buddha taught, and that's what you would like to study. So in each one of these traditions, even in each individual temple, you're going to see variations from place to place to place to place. But the way that you cut through that is that you don't believe anything that you're being taught, including from me. The books that you read, the videos that you watch, the interactions that you have with me, don't believe anything. You need to be able to get to wisdom. That's what's going to help you. But you'll see that these misunderstandings don't actually lead to wisdom. So for example, in the Theravada tradition, you will see this pouring water ceremony. We call it in Thai, we call it Gotama. If you go to the temple and you make an offering to a practitioner, like an ordained practitioner or a teacher, when you make that offering, you're practicing generosity. And this is something that the Buddha taught, because generosity is actually really helpful for your mind. Because with that craving, desire, attachment, your mind will hold on really tightly, because the mind wants and expects things to be a certain way. And you can only be happy if you get what you want. And then you'll be angry and frustrated when you don't get what you want. So the Buddha taught generosity, to give and share with the people around you. This is training your mind to let go. So when you go to a temple and you make an offering, oftentimes what will happen is someone will gesture for you to go get this little urn of water. And as you're there at the event, they will pour out these little urns of water, and there'll be chanting that's going on. And the thought is that whatever benefit that you created by making that offering, that it's being transferred from you to your dead relatives, that you're transferring the merit or the benefit to somebody else. Now, it sounds really sweet. It sounds really nice, right? Like mom and dad have died, or grandma or grandpa dies, and you're going to go to the temple and you're going to do something wonderful, and then you're going to transfer the benefit to mom and dad or grandma and grandpa. Sounds really loving, sounds really warm, but that's not the way the world works. You can't transfer the benefit of your generosity to somebody else, because the benefit of your generosity is that it's training your mind to let go. It's enhancing the quality of your mind. You can't transfer that benefit to somebody else. This is a ritual. This is a ceremony. You will never find anywhere in the teachings of the Buddha that he taught it. But there's countless people in the world that actually do this. And if you were doing this, then that means that you're not understanding the true results and the true benefit of practicing generosity. There's only one benefit to practicing generosity for you, and that is training your mind to let go. And that's what you would like to focus on, is enhancing the quality of your mind. And when you're practicing generosity at a place like a temple or with a teacher, you're also helping other people get access to the teachings. So everything around you was a practice of generosity. Whether it's the cushions that you're sitting on, whether it's the microphone I'm talking on, whether it's the projector that you're looking at, all of these things were donated by somebody at some point. Or maybe someone gave resources to be able to help us to be able to purchase these things. So it's wonderful to practice generosity and help other people get access to the teachings, but you can't do any kind of ceremony and transfer that benefit to someone else, because the benefit is that it's enhancing the quality of your mind. And then for other people, they're getting access to the teachings. That's what the Buddha actually taught. But now, 2,500 years later, with this oral tradition handing down from person to person to person, there's things like this where there's misunderstanding. Whether you choose to do these things or not, it's a choice for you to make. I'm not here to tell you what you should or shouldn't do in your life. You guys are all adults and you're growing up. You're all capable of making decisions for yourself. But if you understand the teachings of the Buddha, now you'll understand what this kind of thing is, and that it's not possible for you to transfer the benefits of what you're practicing with generosity to someone else. Then there's something else called Namun in Thai. We might refer to this as blessed water. During a Buddhist event, there's going to be a bowl of water, and as the monks are chanting, they're going to light a candle and they're going to drip wax into this bowl of water. And now they think that somehow this bowl of water has now been transformed magically to become this blessed water. And then at some point during the event, they're going to dip this little thing in. It almost looks like a broom, and they're going to sprinkle it all over the entire group. Well, this is not anything that the Buddha taught. It was actually going on during the lifetime of the Buddha. He talks about it during his lifetime, and he explains how this isn't something that he practices. But today, these things are actually being practiced, and people think that they're blessing somebody else through this water. Well, we're going to talk about blessings here in a moment, but to have the thought that somehow I can burn a candle and drip wax into a candle, and I can do some chanting over this water, and somehow this water has now magically changed, and if I sprinkle this water on somebody else, it's going to change their life. It takes an enormous amount of ego in your mind to think that you have the ability as a human being to change this water. It doesn't matter who you are. All of us humans, we're all exactly the same. We are all equal. Whether you're wearing white clothes or orange clothes or shaving your hair, we are all equal. We are all at different stages of development in our life, but there's not like a hierarchy in this world, even though other people might think of it that way. Like there's a social hierarchy. It's important that your mind doesn't think of it that way. But if I were to think that I could somehow magically change this water into something special that I could then sprinkle on you, and it was going to make your life special and make your life better, that would take an enormous amount of ego and arrogance from within my mind to think that I could actually do that. So you'll see that from time to time that people will sprinkle this water, and they think that once they get this water sprinkled on them, that somehow their life's going to improve. The only thing that's improved is if it's a hot day, you might feel a little bit cooler. That might be what you get, right? It's not going to make anything better. You're not going to get wealthy. You're not going to get rich. Your boyfriend or girlfriend's not going to come back to you. You're not going to get raise at work or anything like that. You're just going to get a little bit of refreshing water in your face, and it's like, oh, that's nice. Thank you. I feel a little bit cooler, right? So this is something that you'll see around different environments. Then there's this sacred thread, or in Thai, we call it sai sin, where you might have been somewhere and you've had a talk with an ordained practitioner, and then they might tie this string around your wrist, and they might even do some swipes with the string and some different swipes. And I think that they're somehow taking the bad energy out of your body, and somehow this string is going to magically make your life better. Well, the thing that's really benefiting you is if you go speak with someone who's wise and who understands the teachings, that's what's actually benefiting you. Tying the string on your wrist isn't actually helping you. There's nothing about that string that's going to make your life better. But oftentimes people think that that's the case. So they will actually, if they're experiencing sickness or illness, or they're having difficulties in their day-to-day life, they might go to a temple and try to find an ordained practitioner to tie a string around their wrist. Again, if people do this, I wouldn't judge those people. I wouldn't look down on those people. I don't think those people are bad because they're doing those types of things. Again, people grew up with this and they don't know any different in some situations. They don't even realize that this isn't the teachings of the Buddha. In that situation, the people who are receiving that and the people who are giving it probably firmly think that what they're doing is actually helpful. And that's wonderful that they think that way. But it's just a misunderstanding of the teachings of the Buddha, because everything he taught you is to do this inner work and this inner growth and inner development. So if you've done these things, and I've done these things plenty of times in the past, that's how I know that they don't work, then that's what you've done and that's what you've experienced. But if you start learning the original teachings of the Buddha, you can see that they actually work to improve your mind. So these are 3 misunderstandings. I've got some more to share with you, but I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions. Is there anything you guys would like to ask about any of these? Remember, here we have the microphones. And online, you guys can put that into Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom. I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions that you like that way. So, yes, ma'am, you have a question back there? I saw you have a mic. Oh, sure. Yeah. I saw you pick one up first, so I thought I'd come to you first.
Hello. Hi. Just wondering where some of these rituals came from. Is these from Brahmins, like the sacred thread? Where did some of these come from originally? How did they manifest? Yeah.
Sure. So this sacred thread one, this one comes from animism. Prior to the Thai people having Buddhism come here, Buddhism, we think, came here about 800 to 1200 years ago. And we think it came from Sri Lanka, that it came over the sea, and that the Thai people learned it through the people from Sri Lanka when it came here. Prior to 800 to 1200 years ago, the Thais were practicing animism, where they were worshiping inanimate objects, thinking that there's a spirit, and that you needed to worship this inanimate object and that your life was going to improve this way. So this is why you'll see things like people worshiping the mountain spirits or the tree spirits or things like this. And you'll see Thai people wrapping trees. If you've been around Thailand, which you have, you've probably seen that they wrap trees and they wrap different things, and they think that this is a way to kind of keep that thing honored and respected. And if you honor and respect the spirit, it won't cause you harm or cause you difficulties. So we might think that when Buddhism came here 800 to 1200 years ago, that there was like a countrywide announcement. And on Friday, they said, hey, everybody, on Monday morning, we're going to be up and running on Buddhism 2.0, wipe out everything that you've done before, and we're going to be up and running on this new Buddhism 2.0. And that's not the way that it happened. So 800 to 1200 years ago, Buddhism kind of slowly, easily kind of made its way into Thailand, and animism was already there. So they kind of merged all this stuff. And you can even see Hindu teachings oftentimes merged in with Buddhism. So you'll see a little bit of animism, you'll see a little bit of Hinduism, a little bit of Buddhism, even Christianity now has merged into Buddhism. And for that local Thai person who grew up in a remote village and they just see grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, aunts and uncles doing all these different things, they just think that that's Buddhism. They don't have any other perspective. But from us, from the outside looking in, we can see where these things came from. And this one came from animism. This water one, this one was going on before the Buddha. So it's probably coming from Hinduism. This one here, I have it in the book exactly where it came from, but I don't recall off the top of my head. But some of these have actually been traced back to like 500 years ago. There might have been some well-known monk who wrote a certain book. And they said that, in my dreams, I went into the hell realm. And when I went to the hell realm, I encountered all these, devilish beings, and they told me to send them our goodwill. And now that I've been to the hell realm, now I'm going to teach this. This is how we can send them our good merit. And you can see there's been some people that have traced some of these things back to be able to find out where did these come from. And sometimes it's something as far-fetched as that there's just some monk somewhere 500 years ago that wrote this little book, and now everybody believed it and they started doing it. And now it's been spread and propagated all throughout the world. But the beauty is that we have the original teachings of the Buddha, and you can go back to those and you can see what did the Buddha teach, because he talks about, like this one, he talks about how he doesn't do this one and he explains why. Because it leads to wrong view. What the Buddhist teachings are based on is something called right view. Right view is to understand that these feelings and emotions are coming from your own mind. It's not coming from the outside world. And if you have right view, then rather than blaming everybody else for the feelings that you have, you'll look inward and be reflective and introspective. And that's where you'll actually see the real progress and the real improvement in your life. But if you have wrong view, then you'll think it's the outside world that's causing these feelings. So sprinkling water around, thinking that somehow you're blessing everybody and that somehow you're purifying what everybody else is doing, then this is going to promote wrong view. And that's why the Buddha says he didn't do this kind of thing. But you'll see plenty of people who do this, even ordained practitioners, because they just don't know sometimes any different. I've talked to a few ordained practitioners about this particular one. And sometimes when I talk to them, they'll say, yeah, we know that the Buddha never taught it, but because the people ask us for it, we just do it, right? And it's a lot harder for them to sit there and explain to this person that, yeah, the Buddha never taught this. This is what I would do if somebody asked me to do this. But those people have chosen, for whatever reason, not to do that work to be able to teach. And then sometimes ordained practitioners don't even realize that this wasn't taught by the Buddha. They think that that's actually Buddhism. So each of these are coming from different places, but it's a misunderstanding. You have your question ready?
Yeah, so I would argue that every ceremony is not only religious, is a gathering of energies. And I'm pretty sure that this is something, if you feel like you can do something and give energies to someone, even in healing, like body healing, like they proved that people being there for someone is going to make them heal faster. So for sure, some energy gathering cannot be bad. It's like chanting. You are gathering energies around some goal, right?
Do you have a question for me? Because I didn't hear a question in there.
Yeah, so are you like really separating the religious aspect of Buddhism from Buddhism? So Buddhism is like a skill that you learn?
Buddhism is a collection of teachings that are going to lead you to a peaceful and joyful mental state. And in order to accomplish that, you need to do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development to uproot the pollutions out of your mind that are actually producing these discontent feelings. And you can actually independently verify that what the Buddha taught is actually true through learning, investigating, and examining his teachings, through reflecting to verify if they're true or false, and then through practicing those teachings. The things that you're talking about with energy and all that kind of stuff, it's just not true. There's a lot of people who believe in these kinds of things, but there's no energy here. There's individual human beings that are here, and each individual human mind is functioning in whichever way it's functioning. But if you're going to get to peace and joy in your mind, you're going to need to do that training to uproot the pollutions. And one of the things that the mind has very thick is this lack of wisdom and this unknowing of true reality. And it'll believe things like a bunch of people getting together, there's some amount of energy exchange, and somehow that's going to make us feel better. But in order to get to enlightenment, you've got to uproot the pollutions out of the mind, and this is what's going to lead to your peace and joy. And you can study this and you can practice it and see the truth for yourself. But I can tell from your question that you haven't done that work, so that's why your mind doesn't have that understanding.
I mean, so you'd never feel energies when people are doing something together. I'm just talking ceremonies in general, but I've been in ceremonies that made me feel things just because there were people.
It's impossible for the outside world to make you feel anything. And I realize that that's not what you currently understand right now, but it's impossible for the outside world to make any kind of feeling inside your mind. It's impossible for someone to insert a feeling into your mind.
No, but
I'm sorry, I'm talking. You asked a question, but if you'd like to talk, I'll let you talk. You'd like to hear what I have to say? Okay, I'll share it with you. So it's impossible for the outside world to create a feeling inside your mind because nobody can insert something into your mind. Instead, what you're experiencing is your craving, your desire, your attachment, your wants and expectations. It's either getting fulfilled and you experience pleasant feelings, or it's not getting fulfilled and now you experience painful feelings. That's what the mind's going to do in the unenlightened state. But your mind will attribute whatever feelings that you're experiencing within your own mind, you'll attribute it to something external. And this is part of what the unenlightened mind does because of its lack of wisdom, and it hasn't penetrated into the Four Noble Truths. But when you penetrate into the Four Noble Truths, you'll be able to see the truth for yourself, that it's your own mind that's producing those feelings. But because you haven't done that work, there's that certain lack of wisdom that the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand, and it'll attribute the feelings that you're having to the outside world when that's not actually true reality. It's just what your mind is believing and wanting to believe rather than actually seeing the truth for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of work to do to reach enlightenment. So what if I'm doing part of the work I should and part of the work I shouldn't? How do I know what part makes me progress and what part doesn't?
The way you do this is you cultivate wisdom. So here we're in chapter 24, where I've already taught in this program countless teachings to help people to understand what's causing these feelings and the way that you can independently verify. And when you independently verify the teachings that are shared, not these here, you can independently verify these too, but when you learn the beginning teachings, which you haven't had the opportunity to do yet, when you learn those beginning teachings, you independently verify them, and you can see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. So tomorrow, I'm going to be teaching at 9 a.m. tomorrow as part of the Harmony and Relationships course. I'm going to be teaching the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. This will be an excellent time for you to be able to penetrate in, to be able to see what's actually truly causing your feelings. Because as long as you don't understand that it's your own mind causing these feelings, you'll firmly believe it's something external, and you'll keep experiencing. You keep interrupting me, but I can't help you. If you would like to talk, I'll let you talk, but I can't help you if you interrupt me. Would you like to talk? Could you use the microphone so the people online can hear you? They'll appreciate that.
Is it working? Yes, it is. I just came back from Vipassana. I don't feel like I have no knowledge. I'm definitely not enlightened, so I would keep that. But yeah, I feel like what they said over there is kind of different, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's clear in your questioning, in the way that you're asking questions, that you haven't understood the first teaching of the Buddha, which is the Three Universal Truths and the Four Noble Truths. You haven't penetrated into that, so therefore you don't understand what's actually causing your feelings. I'm going to be teaching that tomorrow morning, and I'm inviting you to come because you're welcome to come. Everybody's invited. But you'll go to things like a Vipassana retreat and you'll experience what you experience, and you might think that you actually have learned the teachings of the Buddha, but it's clear that you're not understanding what causes your feelings. And you can't eliminate the anger and the sadness and the frustration and all these other feelings if you don't understand what's causing it. It's not the outside world. So if you would like to learn that, the opportunity is there for you. But the challenge is that the unenlightened mind has a certain amount of ego. What ego is the mind will think that you know. The mind will be arrogant and prideful, and it'll think that you know. And the fact is that if you experience anger and sadness and frustration, all these other feelings, which many unenlightened beings do experience, the mind is in the unenlightened state. It'll think it knows when it really doesn't. Even if you've been to countless retreats. I've had people come here before that they say they've been Buddhist for 30 years. And I'm like, oh, that's great. That's excellent. They said they were ordained for 15 years. And I will ask them, I'll say, well, what causes anger? Because I'm interested in helping people to be able to see the truth of these teachings so they can experience enlightenment. And this person who thinks that they've been Buddhist for 30 years and they were ordained as a monk for 15 years, I ask them a question, what causes anger? And they say, oh, that's very difficult. I wouldn't be able to explain that. Well, if you learn the original teachings of the Buddha, that's the very first thing that you will typically learn with somebody who's actually teaching you to get to enlightenment. But here's somebody who's maybe thinking that they've been involved in Buddhism for 30 years and they've even been ordained as a monk for 15 years, and they don't understand the very first teaching of the Buddha, which is what leads to anger and sadness and frustration and these other feelings. So you're welcome to learn here if you like. I understand that you firmly believe that you've already learned some certain things, but because you still experience anger and all these other different feelings, you know that your mind is not yet enlightened and there's help for you, but you're going to need to lower the ego and understand that you don't know right now, but there is somebody who's willing to help you. But oftentimes the mind will turn away from that because it's just going to hold on to what it currently thinks rather than approach something new and actually learn the true teachings of what it takes to get to this enlightened mental state. So if you'd like help, the help is there for you, but you've got to decide that that's what you would like to be able to do. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question that you said being generous, the only thing you get is let go. I wonder what exactly let go what? Is it anger or sadness or the trauma we have experienced?
So what the unenlightened mind does because of its craving, anger, and ignorance is it holds on. And that's what's causing all these discontent feelings, is that it's holding on. The mind doesn't know how to let go. So this is why, like when you first got together with a boyfriend or girlfriend, if you've ever had that type of relationship, when you guys broke up, you might have been angry or frustrated for a period of time. You might have been lonely or bored or missing this person. This is because the mind was holding on. It was craving permanence. But at some point, if it's been a while, your mind let go, right? But during that period of time where your mind was holding on and you were wanting to be with this person, it was very painful for you. So the Buddha is teaching you how to train your mind to let go mentally, where you don't hold on to things and crave for things to be permanent. So the generosity is training your mind to be able to have this quality to let go. In fact, that meditation we just did this morning, where you're focused on the breath, and anytime the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go and come back to the breath. That's also training your mind to let go. You're building this internal mechanism to let go so that the mind doesn't keep holding on. And there's an entire path. It's not just generosity and it's not just meditation. That's what I'm going to be teaching tomorrow morning. There's multiple things that you need to understand in order to train your mind to let go. And as you do, life's just going to get better and better and better for you because your mind's going to become more and more peaceful and more joyful. Mm-hmm. Okay, so these are the first three here. We're going to study some more here as well. So in the ordained path, the Buddha referred to the male ordained practitioners as bhikkhus and the females as bhikkhunis. These are individuals who left out of household life in order to be able to train directly with the Buddha. During his lifetime, that's how people were mainly getting to enlightenment. You can get to enlightenment as a household practitioner. There's some people in the world that think you can't get to enlightenment as a household practitioner, but you absolutely can. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, oftentimes people were leaving out of the household life because it was much more challenging to get to enlightenment as a household practitioner during the lifetime of the Buddha. Because as a household practitioner, we were busy with things like carrying water back and forth to the well. This would take a half a day, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, where we were just carrying water back and forth from the well. Or we were planting food and making clothing and doing all the other tasks that it took just to survive, right? Where nowadays, a lot of that stuff has been systematized. We just walk over to a sink, we turn a knob, and boom, we've got water, where we don't have to spend that amount of time that we did in the past. In fact, we have so much time in our life nowadays that we oftentimes fill it up with unbeneficial things. Right? We get out one of these little devices and you sit there and you might scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll because we just have so much time in our life where you could actually reduce a lot of that stuff and you'd have a lot more time to train your mind. Where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they didn't really have that amount of time to do things like that. So they were just busy trying to sustain their life. So people would leave out of the household life and they would become ordained in order to be able to train with the Buddha. And during the lifetime of the Buddha, he talked about the ordained practitioners as being the lowest form of livelihood. Because remember, the Buddha was a prince destined to become a king. He was headed for kingship, and he stepped away from that life, entered into a life of homelessness, where he basically just slept in his student's house. His students would donate some sleeping space to him, and he would just sleep wherever people gave him the opportunity to sleep. So he looked at the ordained lifestyle as the lowest form of livelihood, and he was humbling his mind to be able to step down from this kingship that he was destined for into this life of homelessness. And this helped him to be able to let go of that conceit, the ego, the arrogance, the pride, thinking that I'm better than everybody else. It helped his mind to eliminate that by living in this life of homelessness. Well, today, people have really switched this around. If you're in a lot of places, people will take ordained practitioners and they will prop them up thinking that they are higher than all of us. In fact, if you go to become ordained, that's one of the first things that they will teach you, is that the ordained practitioners are higher than the household practitioners. The Buddha never taught this. This is why if you actually go to an ordained practitioner and you why them or you show respect to them, they won't why you back, because they're taught that they are higher than you, that they are a better person than you, that you are below them. But the Buddha never taught this. He didn't teach this pecking order and this hierarchy. In order to be able to get to enlightenment, you've got to eliminate that, understanding that we're all equal, we're all the same. So there's sometimes ordained practitioners who are studying with me, and I put this into the teachings that I share so that ordained practitioners understand that there's not a hierarchy here. In fact, if it wasn't for the household practitioners, ordained practitioners wouldn't even be able to survive, because all of the offerings that help them to survive and sustain their life are coming from the household practitioners. So the Buddha taught that this is the lowest form of livelihood, and that it's important to eliminate the conceit and get the conceit out of the mind where there's not this pecking order. And I've got some words here from the Buddha where you can see that that's what he was actually teaching. So this is one of the first teachings. It's titled, "Gain, Honor, and Praise are an Obstacle even for an Arahant." An Arahant is an enlightened being. This is how they refer to an enlightened being 2,500 years ago. So he says, "Monks, gain, honor, and praise, I say, are an obstacle even for a monk who is an Arahant, one with taints destroyed." Having your taints destroyed means that you've eliminated the pollutions out of the mind, and that the mind is actually enlightened. When this was said, the Venerable Ananda asked the master teacher Gotama, "Why, Venerable Sir, are gain, honor, and praise an obstacle, even for a monk with taints destroyed?" So his student Ananda is saying, hold on a second. If this Arahant, this enlightened being, is enlightened and their taints are destroyed, why would gain, honor, and praise be an obstacle for them, right? So that's a wise question, because by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is stable, it's steady, it's unshakable. There's nothing that is difficult or struggle. The mind is actually fully liberated. It's completely free. The Buddha then follows this up. He says, "I do not say, Ananda, that gain, honor, and praise are an obstacle to his unshakable liberation of mind, but I say they are an obstacle to his attainment of those peaceful dwellings in this very life which are achieved by one who resides diligent, dedicated, and determined. So dreadful, Ananda, are gain, honor, and praise, so bitter, vile, obstructive to the achieving of unsurpassed security from bondage or enlightenment. Therefore, Ananda, you should train yourselves thus. We will abandon the arisen gain, honor, and praise, and we will not let the arisen gain, honor, and praise persist, obsessing our mind. Thus should you train yourselves." So as you're becoming more and more enlightened or more awake, people are going to praise you. People are going to honor you because you're actually performing as a better and better being. You're going to be more loving, more kind, more gentle, more friendly with everybody around you. And you're going to hear all this praise coming to you. But it's important that you don't allow it to obsess your mind. Because one of the things that the mind can do if it has conceit is it can feel emboldened, and it can walk around with a chip on its shoulder and like, look at me, my mind is so concentrated, my mind is so focused, look at how great I am, and look down on other people. But you can see here what the Buddha says is that this gain, honor, and praise is an obstacle, not once you've gotten to enlightenment, but for your attainment of. He says, "Ananda, the gain, honor, and praise are an obstacle to his unshakable liberation." He's saying it's not that he's saying it's an obstacle to his unshakable liberation, but instead it's an obstacle to his attainment of enlightenment. So once your mind's enlightened, gain, honor, and praise isn't going to affect you. Your mind's humble. You just think of yourself as being equal. But in order to get to enlightenment, as people are praising you and telling you, wow, you're so friendly, you're so great, you're so loving, you're so kind, maybe your conceit comes out and thinking you're so much better than everybody else. And you got to be sure you get rid of that and don't allow your mind to be obsessed by that. Here's another teaching on this same topic. This is called "The Spiritual Life is Not Lived for the Sake of Deceiving People." Monks, this spiritual life is not lived for the sake of deceiving people and persuading them, nor for the benefit of gain, honor, and praise, nor for the benefit of winning in debates, nor with the thought, let the people know me thus, but rather this spiritual life is lived for the sake of restraint, abandoning, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination. Right? So sometimes people might think, oh, I'm going to go do this Buddhist thing in order for people to praise me and honor me and think that I'm so great, that I'm such a holy person. But the Buddha is saying that's not what it's for, to be able to go study the teachings of the Buddha. The purpose of studying his teachings is to get to this elimination of discontentedness. It's not to win in debates. Sometimes people will get around and debate and argue and fight about who is right and who is wrong about the teachings of the Buddha. And that's what the Buddha is calling, let the people know me thus. It's like poking out the chest and being boastful. And the Buddha is saying this isn't what his teachings are about. His teachings have one goal, and that is to help you to get to enlightenment, where the mind's completely eliminated all of its discontentedness. So whether you're an ordained practitioner or whether you're a household practitioner, if people are trying to prop you up and make you think that you're so great and so wonderful, don't allow your mind to be obsessed by that. You need to be able to be humble, because if you have this pecking order in your mind where you think you're above other people, you're going to look down on them and you're going to talk down to those people, and they're going to sense that ego coming from you, and they're just going to push you aside. And they're going to be disinterested in associating with you. And if you put yourself above people, that means in certain situations, you're probably putting yourself below people too. When you go around your boss, you might be all shaken up when you're around that person. Or maybe a famous celebrity or a politician or something like this. You might be all shaken up and unsteady and uncalm. If you're going to get to enlightenment, your mind's going to be unshakable, where your mind can't be shaken up by anything whatsoever. So in order to do that, part of what the mind needs to do is get rid of its conceit, where you're not putting yourself above people or below people. Then there's chanting and mantras that you'll see in a lot of places, that people will think that these chants or mantras have special powers. They're almost like prayers, like somehow if you do these special mantras, it's going to produce some kind of beneficial result for you. If you go to some places, they'll say, here, chant this special chant. It's only our temple that knows this chant. If you chant this chant 10 times every day, you're going to get rich and you're going to get wealthy. Or chant this special chant. Your boyfriend or your girlfriend's going to come back to you. Or chant this special chant. You're going to get an extra long life if you chant this special chant. Now, it's wonderful to think that those things could potentially exist, but they just don't exist. If you're going to get to wealth, or you're going to get your boyfriend or girlfriend to come back to you, or you're going to get a long life or any of these other things, you're going to need to practice wise decision making. That's what's going to lead to that. There isn't anything mystical or magical that you can chant and you're magically going to become wealthy. If the Buddha would have created something like this 2,500 years ago, we've had 2,500 years of history for that to be able to spread through society, and everybody would already know that already. I mean, think about it. You go to a really nice restaurant that has good service and good food. How many people do you tell? 5, 10, many different people, right? So if there was something the Buddha created 2,500 years ago that was going to instantly produce wealth for you, we've had 2,500 years of history for that to be able to spread through the world. But don't believe me, and don't believe other people either. If you go to a temple and they say, here, there's this special chant that's going to produce an extra long life if you chant this chant. Well, look around the temple. Do you see people that are 150, 200, 300 years old? If you do, then there's some truth to it. But if you don't see people that are that old, then you know that these people are just believing this particular thing. So don't believe me, but don't believe other people either, and test these things for yourself to look for the truth. There's statues of the Buddha that you'll see all throughout the world, and these statues don't accurately reflect what the Buddha looked like during his lifetime. Even here in Thailand, you'll see him wearing very elaborate clothing. He'll have kind of a headdress on his head. He didn't actually dress that way. This is actually what the Buddha looked like during his lifetime. This was created by an artist now based on the original teachings of the Buddha and how he described himself to look. The people who started creating statues were creating statues about 500 years after his death. So once he died, the people who were living during his lifetime, they were also dying too. So about 500 years after his death, the people that were practicing his teachings came in contact with the people in Greece who were making statues of their gods. And they learned how to make statues of people through the study with the Greek people. And when they were making statues of their gods, these people who were studying Buddhism were like, who do we have to make a statue out of? So they started making statues out of the Buddha, and they started casting statues of what they thought that he might look like, because none of those people lived during his lifetime, because it was 500 years after his death. So when they created statues of the Buddha, nobody knew what he actually looked like, and they hadn't studied his original teachings. So that's why all these statues that you see of the Buddha, he doesn't actually look like that. Here in Thailand, people will say he looks very Thai. If you go to China, the statues look very Chinese. And if you go to Japan, he looks very Japanese. That's because if you're living in China, 2,000 years ago, and you're making statues, well, everybody around you looks Chinese. So you would probably think that the Buddha looked Chinese, because in your mind, you probably think everybody looks the same as you, because you've never actually seen anybody from another culture before. The same thing in Japan or Thailand or other places like this. So you tend to cast statues based on your understanding of what a human being looks like. And 2,000 years ago, there wasn't as much interaction with different ethnicities. So people in a certain culture thought that everybody looked that way. Everybody in the world looked the way that they looked. So this is why you'll see statues of the Buddha looks very different from one culture to the next, because those cultures are casting statues that look like themselves. Where in reality, the Buddha was born in what we refer to as Nepal or Northeast India. And this is what he looked like, that this artist was actually a Thai artist, and he looked in the Pali Canon, and he actually did this artwork based on the description of the Buddha during his lifetime. So these statues that you see, you don't have to have a statue in order to get to enlightenment. There's people that think that these statues have a spirit inside of them, and they will feed these statues, they will bathe these statues, they will treat this statue as like an actual real person, because they think that the spirit of the Buddha is inside those statues. But the Buddha never taught to make statues of him, and he never taught that his spirit exists inside of those statues. In fact, he never taught that there is a spirit or there isn't a spirit. He didn't teach these kinds of things. So if you see these kind of things being shared, you can understand that it's not the original teachings of the Buddha. Again, whether you choose to do these things or not, it's up to you. I used to do these things. I used to treat statues very special. I used to have all these different statues. I used to bow to them. I used to feed them. I used to bathe them. It doesn't lead to enlightenment. And that's how I know that, because I've done these things. And that's how you know that I'm not judging other people. I'm not looking down on them, because I did those same exact things too. And that's part of the learning process of me understanding that these things don't lead to enlightenment. So whether you choose to do these things or not, it's a choice for you to make. But this isn't what the Buddha taught, and it's not going to lead to your enlightenment. But it's maybe nice for you to have a certain artwork. That's the way that I look at these statues. When I see statues of the Buddha, I'm like, wow, that's so beautiful. That's so respectful. People really appreciate his teachings. And that's the reason why people are making these statues, because they really appreciate the fact that he shared his teachings. And maybe that's the way you look at a statue, is, wow, it's really beautiful. It's a nice artwork. That's the way that I look at them, and I appreciate them for their artwork. But I don't bow down to a statue anymore. I don't feed a statue. I don't bathe statues anymore. I know that the Buddha's spirit is not in these statues, because he never taught those kinds of things. So if you would like to do these things, it's totally up to you, but at least you'll understand that that's not what the Buddha taught, and it's a misunderstanding. But you'll see plenty of people that are doing these kinds of things. So any questions on any of these three here that you guys would like to ask? Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. Okay, so now the last three to talk about here is, excuse me one second. So some people think of Gotama Buddha as a god or an avatar or a lord. You might hear this. People might say, Lord Buddha, or they might refer to the Buddha as a god or different things like this. The Buddha never taught these kinds of things. In his lifetime, there was actually someone who came to him and asked him, are you a heavenly being? He said, no, I am not a heavenly being. They even asked him, are you a god? Are you this? Are you that? Are you this? And he said, no, I am none of those things. And he said, remember me as awake. Remember me as a Buddha. That's what he was describing himself as. So he came into the world through the womb of a woman. And for anybody who comes into this world through the womb of a human being who is a woman, we refer to that as a human being, right? So the Buddha was a human being, but oftentimes people will associate with him as a god, an avatar, or a lord. Well, if you look up the definition of a lord, it's completely opposite of what the Buddha taught. That the word Lord, it means someone or something having power or authority or influence, a master or ruler. That a Lord is acting in a superior or domineering manner towards someone. Well, the Buddha actually did just the opposite of this. He actually thought of himself as being down to earth and humble and the lowest form of livelihood. He didn't prop himself up in this domineering way. So if we refer to the Buddha as a Lord, then that means we're assigning all those attributes to the Buddha, which the Buddha didn't describe himself that way. And there's some places in the world that think of Jesus Christ as the only Lord and Savior. So that means that they're taught that they should never honor or respect any other Lord or any other Savior. So if we refer to the Buddha as Lord Buddha, then that means those people who think about Jesus Christ as being the Lord and Savior, they would never approach the teachings of the Buddha because they're not interested in honoring or respecting another Lord. But the Buddha never actually referred to himself as a Lord. He's never talked about himself as a Messiah or a Savior or anything like that. So if we assign those attributes to the Buddha, then that means this large population of people who consider themselves to be Christian and who could potentially approach the teachings of the Buddha in order to get help to experience the enlightened mental state, they would never actually get that help that they need in order to experience enlightenment. So again, whether someone refers to the Buddha as a Lord or not, that's a choice for them to make. I would encourage you to not think of him that way and don't think of him as a god because he never ever described himself that way. But if somebody else decides to do that, then that's a choice for them to make. But I don't refer to him that way because I understand he was a human being. He was a teacher. He was someone who, with loving kindness and compassion, shared his teachings for 45 years, helping countless people get to enlightenment. Then sometimes people talk about blessings and they might say, may the Buddha bless you, or may the triple gem bless you. You might hear these kinds of things. What a blessing is if you look this up in the dictionary, it means God's favor and protection, a prayer asking for God's favor and protection. The Buddha never taught this kind of thing. The Buddha did teach about God during his lifetime, but he didn't put God at the center of his teachings. He put you at the center of his teachings because it's you that needs to learn and grow and develop, become a better and better person. But he never taught about seeking protection from God because everything that you experience is based in your own decisions. It's not based in God's decisions. God doesn't determine what you experience on a day-to-day basis. It's your own decisions that lead to any particular result that you experience. So the idea of someone blessing you, again, it would take an enormous amount of ego for somebody to think that they could bless you. That's why when you come here, you don't see me blessing you because there's nothing that I can do to bless you, quote unquote, bless you, because everything that you experience in life is coming from decisions that you're making. And there's no amount of blessing that is going to protect you from any particular decision that you make. It doesn't matter how much water you get sprinkled on you or how much somebody might think that you're being blessed. If you go out into the world and you make unwise decisions, you're going to experience unwholesome results. And that's what you'll experience. It's not any kind of blessing that's going to protect you. It's your own wisdom. It's your own decisions that are going to protect you. And that's why the Buddha focused you on cultivation of wisdom. And then lastly is some people will tell you that everybody is a Buddha, or that everybody has Buddhahood, or that everybody has Buddha nature. This is what people will say today. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he never said that. A Buddha is a very unique type of individual. In order to be a Buddha, someone would need to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then are going to dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. This is a very rare type of individual in the world. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So not everybody is an actual Buddha. you can get to enlightenment, but you wouldn't be a Buddha at that point because you wouldn't meet these three criteria. So there's a lot of misunderstanding that there's different traditions that will tell you that everybody is a Buddha, or that you have Buddhahood, or you have Buddha nature. But here you can see in the original words of the Buddha that he didn't say it that way, and he didn't teach it that way. These are called the 5 rare treasures. So he's talking about the rare appearance of 5 treasures. So he's talking to the student, and he says, the appearance of 5 treasures is rare in the world. What 5? The appearance of a Tathagata, an Arahant, a perfectly enlightened one, is rare in the world. Right? So a Tathagata is a Buddha. This means the one who's discovered the truth, the one who discerns the truth. That's what a perfectly enlightened one is an actual Buddha. And he talks about how rare it is that this individual exists in the world. Well, if every single one of us was a Buddha, that's not very rare, is it? So while people today say that everybody is a Buddha, the Buddha never taught that. And it's helpful for you to understand what a Buddha is and what a Buddha is not, because you're actually going to need teachers and guides to help you to be able to get to enlightenment. You're going to need to do the inner work, the inner growth, the inner development in order to be able to get to enlightenment, but you need a teacher. A teacher is like a tour guide, pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and understand. You are your own independent practitioner, learning how to grow and develop in order to be able to get to enlightenment. But a teacher is pointing out for you the things that you need to understand. So you're not going to be a Buddha when you get to enlightenment, but you'll be enlightened and you'll be plenty pleased with that. There's these other things that the Buddha talks about that is rare in the world, but I wasn't planning to go through those, but you'll see these in our book series because these are the original words of the Buddha. But this first one, you can see that the Buddha is talking about how rare it is for a Buddha to exist in the world. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So that's how rare it is for this type of individual to be in the world. But you're going to hear people that tell you everybody is a Buddha. But you'll understand the truth on this topic because this is a big misunderstanding in the world. So any questions on any of these misunderstandings here? Yes, ma'am.
So Christian believe that God creates the world. Have ever the Buddha said who created the world?
The Buddha does have a creation story. If you look in volume 11, chapter 58, the Buddha's creation story is there. He explains how the world was created. I have no way of verifying that that's the way that it actually occurred. And I independently verify all the teachings of the Buddha, but I can't independently verify that because I wasn't there when it was actually created. He doesn't talk about it as being God, but he does talk about a being, but he never uses the word God during his creation story. But then there's other parts of his teachings where he does talk about God as the creator. So if you read his creation story, he doesn't use the word God, but he talks about a being. But then in other parts of his teachings, he talks about the God as being creator. So you could connect these two things and say that that's what he's teaching, but we have no way of actually confirming it right now. The only way that you can really confirm this kind of thing is science tells us that there is, rocks that came together essentially in gases, that kind of the Big Bang theory, right? Well, I understand looking around the world, this world is constructed with such intricacy and such intelligence that these Big Bang theory, while that may have occurred, there was somebody involved, some higher power, in my opinion, that created everything that we experience today, because the way that the world works, it's just too complex in order for just this Big Bang to have produced all the complexity of the world that we see. So in my thoughts, I think, in my opinion, that what the Buddha is saying about this being of God being the creator, I think that's the way it actually occurred. But I wasn't there to know for myself. But based on all the evidence that I see, I don't see any reason why that's not true. So I tend to think that that's actually the case of what's truly occurred. But other people have other thoughts on that. And it's an interesting topic to talk about, but in reality, it doesn't really matter because none of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. It's not about figuring out what happened in the past, however many billions of years ago that might have occurred. It's about learning and growing and developing now in this life to be able to get to enlightenment. And it's not based on what happened in the past. So you're not having to believe certain things. But when I think about this topic and I look at it, I'm like, yeah, there's something very intelligent that put all this together. There's no way that it was just, rocks coming together or gases coming together. All right. I don't see any other questions anywhere. Let me look online here. I don't see any here either. So what I'm going to do is in class, like I typically do, by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. As you guys would like to learn more, there's plenty of opportunities for you guys to do that. Today at 6:30, we have a Sunday night meditation here where I'm going to be doing loving kindness meditation. This is a different type of meditation than we did this morning. This is actually helping you to rewire your mind to be loving and kind, getting rid of that anger and the hatred and the bitterness, because that's just plaguing your life and making it difficult for you to have harmonious relationships. So there's a meditation that will help you with that. So I'm going to be doing that this evening on Sunday night at 6:30. It syncs up with the Sunday night walking market. If you're coming to that, you can come here if you like. Tonight at 9 p.m., I'm going to be doing the same talk. I do the same class twice a day because like right now, the people in Europe are sleeping. And if they would like to attend a live class, I do it tonight as well. So you're welcome to come for that if you like. Tomorrow, I'm going to be starting a Harmony and Relationships course from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's going to be Monday through Friday. And this is a course that's going to help you to understand how to build harmony in all the relationships that you experience. Because oftentimes people have disharmony in their relationships in the unenlightened state, maybe with your parents or your sibling or your life partner, your children. These relationships are oftentimes very challenging for you to navigate. So I'm going to be teaching this all next week. So you're welcome to come to any of that, and you can look at our bulletin board over there. You can look at our website. You'll find all the different options for you. I suggest people start with this first book. As you see, we're coming to the end of this program. We're actually going to be restarting it on the 9th of August. So if you would like to start this program from the very beginning, starting on the 9th of August, I'm going to be starting from the beginning. And you can attend while you're here in Chiang Mai or online because we live stream all of our classes. And if you can't attend live, you can actually watch the recordings. All of everything's available for you at no cost, whether it's the books, the videos, the podcasts, the courses and classes, retreats, the personal guidance, everything's available for you. So if you'd like to get one of these books, all you need to do is download it from our website for free. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost so we can use that to go purchase more books, or you can order it on Amazon. But that's the best place to get started is the first book. And you're always welcome to come talk to me and I can help you get plugged in to all the different resources and the ways to be able to learn in these classes. So whatever you choose to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee krap.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.